Derby County owner David Clowes is reportedly giving Paul Warne considerable investment for the rest of this January transfer window. It is reportedly in order to cover a new centre-half after Curtis Nelson's injury. Now for me, Derby County needed considerable investment before Curtis Nelson's injury and even more so after. Now, if this money that has been put in is purely for a centre-back, then David Clowes has lost the plot, because Derby County need much more than a centre-back. With injuries to Curtis Nelson, Nat Phillips and Erin Cashin, Derby County don't have a recognised centre-half that Paul Warne is willing to play. We then go on to the full-back position, where Kane Wilson and Ryan Niambi are both currently injured. Joe Ward, we never really know what his fitness is, and that leaves us with no left-back apart from Callum Elder and Craig Forsyth, both of which had to play at centre-half in midweek. Now, Derby County then look into the midfield. Ben Osborne can't play more than 2 games in a week. Liam Thompson has been up and down with his fitness across the course of this season. Marcus Harness has had his injury problems. And David Ozo, where is he? He was at the game on Tuesday night, but is he available to play this weekend? Who actually knows? We then go on to talk about those players in the wide positions. Corey Blackett-Taylor has been hot and cold with injury this season as well, according to Paul Warne, though I believe that something else has gone off behind the scenes when it comes to those two. So it's a really, really difficult and interesting situation. You also look at Mendes Lang, who I believe is currently playing injured. He just doesn't seem to have the work rate and effort that he had at the start of the season. We then go, obviously, into the forward line, where now we only have Jerry Yates and Selverson after letting James Collins go, Connor Washington's injury, and Dejon Brown picking up a knock in midweek as well. And for me, realistically, I think Paul Warne is going to struggle to keep Derby in this division no matter what happens. I think Paul Warne has struggled in this division from day one, whether it be with Rotherham or with Derby County. We're currently on a similar sort of trajectory of those Rotherham sides that he managed, and ultimately is winning every game in League One. Exciting and interesting, of course it is. But is getting relegated interesting? Absolutely not. Is that what the Derby County fans want? Absolutely not. Is it what the squad wants? No. And in order for Paul Warne to be able to succeed with this squad and keep us in the Championship, he needs investment. Now, I've said time and time again that I'm not Paul Warne's biggest fan. You know that, I know that. It's not something that I've ever sort of hidden. I've always thought that we could do better and that better managers are out there and available. Now, for me, the big question must be is, has Paul Warne been thrown under the bus with backing from David Clowes and no money? Or is Paul Warne just unable to deliver on the budget that David Clowes has given? Now, for me, Paul Warne believes he's getting the best out of these players. I personally disagree. I think you can get a lot more out of a lot of these players just by changing the way we play. We've spent the last 5 months playing target man ball to a 5'9" Jerry Yates, which ultimately is not getting the best out of your players. You've got wingers with pace and power who we're not giving the ball to in the channels. We're giving it to them at feet on the halfway line, which, don't get me wrong, isn't a problem. But Caden Jackson don't want the ball at feet at the halfway line, and he shows that by the way he plays, always going backwards. Now, this considerable investment that David Clowes has signed off on, if that is purely just for a new centre-half, then what are Derby County doing? Because we need a lot more than just a centre-half. Now, we also have to talk about the words considerable investment that are used by Ed Dawes. I'll make sure to put the article on screen throughout this video so you can see what's been said. But for me, he said in the summer we'd have a competitive budget for the Championship. I even go back to that of, we go back to the budget talks of League One, where we was told we'd have a proper competitive budget for that. And ultimately then all we had all season was Paul Warne complaining about budgets. Now, I personally believe we did have a fairly decent budget for League One. If I remember rightly, I think our wage bill was in the top 6 quite comfortably, maybe even up in the top 2. But we now go on to these words, considerable investment, and the competitive budget discussion from the start of the season. And do people believe that David Clowes is giving this money? Because I'm starting to feel 50-50 about the conversations that we're hearing from the owner, the news and things like that are coming out after conversations with the owner or conversations with the club. Because how can you sign off on considerable investment on a centre-half to, like, yesterday, whenever this article was released for you watching this video, when we've needed a striker for 5-6 years before David Clowes was even owner. We've needed a centre-half to replace Sonny Bradley all season. We've needed a fullback to replace Craig Forsyth because don't get me wrong, Forsyth put in a valiant display against Sunderland in midweek, but going forward, we still need a new one. We've got injury problems at right back, and we only really have one proper right back, which is Ryan Niambi. In midfield, we're lacking creativity. Up front, we've lacked a striker, as I mentioned earlier, since Paul Warne came, but even before then. We then go on to the wide areas where ultimately the players we've got, in my opinion, I think Corey Blackett-Taylor is the only one who's really shown any promise over the course of the last few months, and that's always been in little spells. So where was this considerable investment when we knew the problems we were facing with the squad already? Because we're missing out on key investment and key players by not having that money available. Now, I completely understand that the budgetary requirements don't fall on the shoulders of Paul Warne, but what I would love Derby County to do is let us know what was available at the end of the season. When we go down, just let us know. Why not? What harm can it do? Apart from harm to Paul Warne and Mark Thomas and the whole recruitment team, because you have to have those discussions where you look at the players we've bought in. Ultimately, a lot of them don't fit Paul Warne's hard-working, tackling, athletic, target men type vibe. You look at our defence, we brought in Nat Phillips, who ultimately Paul Warne wanted a quick, strong, athletic defender. Nat Phillips isn't that. We didn't bring in anyone at fullback, fair enough. David Ozo probably kind of suited Paul Warne in the way that he plays, can win the ball, can break, things like that. Kenzo Holdmine, in my opinion, is not a Paul Warne player. Yes, he's a little bit technical and creative, and I think that's what takes him away from the Paul Warne calibre. Marcus Harness, in my opinion, is not a Paul Warne type player. I think Caden Jackson is, but I don't think he's played in the right position. I think realistically he needs to play in a front two, where you've got someone winning the headers and he's running onto it. And then obviously you've got the likes of Mendes Lang, Barkes, and all players who I don't think are Paul Warne style players on the terms of their skill set. You obviously then look at Jerry Yates. We've been playing target man ball to a 5'9" striker all season, and obviously, in my opinion, you can't put fault on the recruitment team. They'll have put a whole host of numbers in front of Paul Warne from March time all the way forward. There'll have probably been 2 lists. If we don't go up, if we do go up, we went up. Jerry Yates obviously is a really good player. I don't have any problems with Jerry Yates. I actually really like him as a footballer. But he just doesn't suit Paul Warne's style of play. Playing long balls and crosses into a 5'9" striker against minimum 6 foot defenders, in my opinion, is really stupid. And I've spoke about it a few times over the course of the last few weeks. And don't get me wrong, Jerry Yates has had bright spells. Of course he has, because he's a good footballer. And when we actually play football, he looks really good. But we don't do that often. And we spoke over the past few days about the likes of Timothy Fosu Mensah, Oscar Fraulo, the centre-half from Aston Villa. I can't really remember his name, my apologies. And even the likes of Harvey Nibbs. I don't think a lot of these players suit what Paul Warne wants to do based on what we're seeing. And that is where my problem lies, is even with this investment that David Clowes is putting in to cover a new centre-half, are they going to suit what Paul Warne wants? Probably not. And this is the situation we find ourselves in, is we're going to end up going down and losing 10 million in revenue purely because we're sort of being stubborn based on a decision we made 2 years ago on bringing in Paul Warne to get us out of League One. I always thought the 4-year deal was a bit lengthy. Couldn't really talk about it at the time due to my position at the club. And obviously, if I'd have said that the new manager didn't deserve a 4-year contract, I probably would have seen myself heading out the door rather quickly. But it's certainly one of those where I thought 4 years. It's a massive, massive commitment to a manager that you want to get you promoted that has never, ever survived a full championship season from the relegation zone. Well, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I think whatever this considerable investment is, it has to be done quickly, has to be done as quickly as possible. Obviously, we spoke about potential signings over the course of the last few days. We'll continue to do so until the transfer window closes. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, turn on that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.